I think it was, there was certainly a lot of hype towards the end of last year about the business we sold to a company in Chile, but maybe just take us through a bit of the story.
Sure, thanks, Rick. And yeah, good afternoon to everybody, and thanks again for joining us. It was an interesting deal because there were many variables that may resonate to some of the listeners or attendees on this webinar. And the first being our client had actually approached the market before unsuccessfully. So that's never easy to try and have a second go. And one can argue they were well prepared, because when we got involved, we started walking the journey again. But there's different levels of preparation. And I think what stood out for me on that one, before we get to the actual conclusion, was there was a family dynamic, shareholder dynamic, as well as the business dynamic. And I think in those environments, in those businesses where you have either family or multiple shareholders, that element around preparation is really, really critical, because it's often those softer qualitative issues that are the ones that potentially derail something towards the end. But what was interesting with this transaction was it was not an easy one. And we'll chat about it a little bit later, but we followed an exhaustive process to find buyers. And it was a classic case where we typically want multiple buyers to the table, but through our process and our networks, we found that one buyer that happened to be based in Chile, and it just was a match made in heaven. So it was almost a laundry list of things and challenges that we had to manage with the buyer through the process. But that was really, really important, because you're doing a cross-border transaction, and if you're not prepared for that, it just adds an added level of complexity. So yeah, very interesting, very challenging. It took longer than planned, but that's often the case with these types of elements. And there was, I suppose,